Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Gregory Wright Show. Um, you probably saw a recent go live that I was almost an hour late to that got cut off at like 5 minutes and 29 seconds because I was getting into the final numbers of the Joe Biden administration. And I got to tell you, it's looking pretty bleak when you compare the numbers to President Donald Trump's numbers when he served his first term. And the trajectory of the way the economy is going, even now in his second term. And what I was getting into was that the purpose of this video is to compare and contrast Joe Biden's economy to Trump's economy during his first term and second term, because now, I mean, you got to include everything. But YouTube decided to cut me off in mid sentence because I was speaking the truth. And here's what I'm going to say right now. Here's what I'm going to do right now. I am going to let you guys know that there's not one politician, whether it be Democrat or Republican, that is going to be here to save you. Nobody is going to come down from their high horse. That's a politician. And come and swoop you up and bring you to their level. They're not going to do that. They're going to, your strife, your struggle, your means of earning a living, whether it be plentiful or not, as long as you're still living and breathing and you on the right side of the grass, you'll be okay. But to standards of the average American person, you were not making it until you have your own place to live where you can express your own goodness or drama. You have some type of transportation plans, whether it be your own car, a neighbor driving you to where you need to go, or a family member driving you where you need to go. My point is that you are only going to see success when you convince yourself that you're already successful. You're not a victim. You're not a victim at all. I'm not here to lecture you. I'm not here to preach to you, but nobody else is saying it. Nobody else is saying it. So I got to say it. I have to say it. Where I left off was that the Biden administration, President Joe Biden was installed. Okay, much like Vice President Harris was installed to become the front runner for the Democratic Party for the Democratic presidential candidate nomination to run nationally against Donald Trump. She did not receive one vote to get her in. She did not receive any special signatures or letters to get her in. She was installed. Now, when I say they forced President Joe Biden out of the 2024 presidential election, I mean people like Nancy Pelosi, who is being accused of insider stock trading based on her ranking membership of the lower chamber of Congress. Not only that, but her husband has a winning track record of getting into and out of stocks and bonds based on legislation that is about to take place or has taken place allegedly. They got rich off of this. You know, we talking about Barack Hussein Obama pulling the strings behind the scenes. When you pull the curtain back, if you ever watched, um, it's an old school movie, It's not Alice in Wonderland. I forgot what movie it was. They made a Michael Jackson version of it. Um, it's the movie that got the yellow brick road, and the name of the movie escapes me right now. But you, you know, you pull the curtain back, all you see is a little man with a big ego, and I equate that to the Democratic Party. The 2020 election was stolen. Now, these bitch ass YouTube handlers, they'll probably cut my feed again. But if we don't have free speech, what do we have? I'm going to get into the content. I mean, but I got to kind of rant a little bit because they cut my first feed off, and I'm trying again. And if they cut it off again, I'm just going to switch over to Rumble. So, I mean, you could do three things that are free for me right now, and that's like, sharing, and subscribing to this video. And then the fourth thing is really to watch this video all the way through, because those four things will combine and say to the YouTube algorithm that people are interested in my content and are also interested in spreading this content um, among a wider audience beyond my subscribers. And so you have my word that I'm not going to say anything that is going to get me in trouble in any manner. I'm just going to say the truth. And the truth is that YouTube is the bastion of putting the kibosh on free speech. And so let's get back to Joe Biden real quick, right? Let's get back to Joe Biden real quick. So I want to have the factcheck.org background while I'm speaking. And factcheck.org by no means is a Republican leaning, conservative leaning organization. These guys are so left leaning that you will fall over, um, if you lean more to the left, and you have right wing folks who are so far right that they would tip over to the right as well. But here's where I start cooking. You got mainstream media, and you have the old guard of the Democratic Party, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, Barack Hussein Obama, Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton. You got all these people. Carville, I think his name is George Carville, Bill Maher, mainstream media, who is the media propagandist arm of the Democratic Party, spreading lies about their political opponents. Russia, Russia, Russia was the biggest thing in 2015 all the way up to now, 10 years later. Found out that there's no proof that President Trump and his campaign colluded with Russia to steal the election from Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton sucked as a Democratic candidate that could run against someone who was deemed to be outside of DC. He was an outsider, and he still is. President Trump still is an outsider. But we got this October 9th, 2025, Biden's final numbers, but that doesn't stop the mainstream media and Joe Biden or his handlers. I don't know who his handlers are, but they trotting them out there. Hey, if I was this old, I would not be standing on stage unless I needed the money. Well, heck, you done bled all the money that you could from the taxpayers while you were in power. You're 50 years in the Senate, or however, I don't know, 30, 40 years in the Senate, 4 years as president. This is who they trotting out.
That's what we worked so damn hard to do during my administration. In those 4 years, we created 16 million new jobs. Unemployment dropped. Unemployment dropped to a 50-year low. We lowered the price of everything from health care to cost of college to junk fees and airline tickets and credit cards. We made a lot of progress. We had so much more we had to do to make life affordable for every American. And it's this work that's motivated so many of you to step up, put your name on the ballot, and run for office. LGBT candidates across the country running not only to ensure equality for every American, but also to ensure that every American has access to opportunities they deserve. That's what we worked so damn hard to do during my administration. In those 4 years, we created 16 million new jobs. Unemployment dropped. Unemployment dropped to a 50-year low. We lowered the price.
16 million jobs added to Biden's economy during his term as president. As you will learn during my reading, and listen, I'm not concerned about time right now. We're going to learn during my reading that President Biden only benefited from the economy that was set to boom after a bust because everything is a cycle. You look at the weather patterns if you're in a state where you experience all four seasons. You're basically going to see two things. You're going to see grass dying and grass growing, trees dying, leaves falling off, and you got to rake them up, and then buds growing on those same branches in March and April. Everything has a cycle. Human beings have a cycle. We live and we die. That's it. And so what you're seeing here is that when President Biden or former President Biden is spiking the football because he created 16 million jobs under his administration, most of those jobs, well, I would say nearly all of them, were rehires from people who quit or lost their job and then found another job. And then the other half of that is, during the pandemic. And then the other half of that is the federal government started hiring people like nobody's business. The federal government started hiring people like nobody's business. So if you want to grow government and have government control every aspect of your life, then you grow government. If you want government out of every aspect of your life, then you shrink government. And then when you shrink government, it shrinks costs to the American people. And so we got viewers coming in and out here, but President Biden was installed. They took, listen, I'm going to say this, whether YouTube likes it or not. President Biden was installed during the 2020 election cycle. The powers that be, George Soros and his son, the ACLU, which I'm pretty sure that Soros money goes to. I'm pretty sure that taxpayer money goes to through non-governmental organization, also known as NGOs and personal donors. Look, all you have to look at is the book 2000 Mules or read the look at the movie or read the book 2000 Mules. All you have to do is look at recent headlines that Fulton County, Georgia already admitted a couple of days ago that 315,000, and I'm going to make a separate story about this, but 350 315,000 or more mail-in ballots that were not signed in Fulton County, Georgia were certified by Fulton County voting officials and wrapped into uh, supporting Biden in during the 2020 presidential election in the state of Georgia. If the ballots are not signed, they should not be certified, according to reports. So why were they certified? To cheat. Now they're admitting it, and Fulton County is being sued. That's the latest headline I read. I didn't get into the article, but let's take a look here, right? You heard the video, but now Biden's final numbers posted on October 9th, 2025. Here's the summary. Final numbers for Joe Biden's full term are nearly all in. Here's our rundown of various statistical measures during his presidency. Inflation roared back, shrinking the value of workers' paychecks. Consumer prices rose 21.5%. Gasoline alone rose 31%. After adjusting for inflation, private sector average weekly earnings shrank by 4%. The economy regained millions of jobs lost during the coronavirus pandemic and around 6 million more. Unemployment averaged 4.1%, well below the historical average. So the 16 million jobs that Joe Biden in his video was talking about was the ones that were gained because a lot of people lost their jobs during the pandemic. So when the economy is attempting to conduct a rebound from previous levels of operation before the pandemic, post pandemic, you're going to try to reach those pre pandemic levels. And I think that's where most of the 16 million jobs that Joe Biden created under his tenure. It's almost like saying, okay, I burnt your house, but I called the authorities and, um, taking credit for the fire department to show up to put the fire out, and then, either coordinated resources or provided resources on my own to fix up your place, and then, want to get credit for fixing up your place when I burned it down in the first place. It doesn't make any sense. And this is the reason why this channel exists, because a lot of common sense has to be applied to life now, because a lot of people insinuate that you're too stupid to understand what's really going on. The economy regained millions of jobs lost during the coronavirus pandemic and around 6 million more. Unemployment averaged 4.1%, well below the historical average. The economy grew by at least 2.5% each year, with real gross domestic product growth of 2.8% in 2024. The percentage of the number of Americans who lack health insurance went down by 6 tenths of a percent, or 1.2 million people when measuring those who were uninsured for the entire year. The nationwide violent crime and crime rates decline, okay, during the Biden administration. Murder rate dropped by 1.7 points. I don't know if they meant that as a percentage or points or whatever the case is. What they put out 1.7 points, but from what though? You know. And then when you want to talk about violent crime and property crime rates decline, yeah, the George Floyd riots ceased when Joe Biden was installed during the 2020 candidate presidential uh, you know race, right? I'll even go as far as to say that they created the damn pandemic to get Trump out of there. They work. I believe the Democratic Party worked with China to be like, look, you got to do us a favor, man. You got to create something that's gonna, and maybe they work through Dr. Fauci. I don't know. The whole thing's a mystery to me. Why would they close down schools? Why would they close down churches? Why would they close down businesses, workout industries? Why would they, close gyms that when you work out, it's documented that you become a better person. You become at an equilibrium between stress and relaxation, or learning, through exercise you learn how to deal with stress better. Why would they close down all those churches and gyms and all that other kind of stuff, but keep the liquor stores open, keep McDonald's open, all these destructive things to keep you distracted, right? But what we got to understand is that the George Floyd riots ended after Biden Harris were elected president and vice president respectfully, or respectively. I apologize. Respectively. So of course crime went down during those years. Crime spiked during 2020 because of George Floyd riots. So this is what I'm saying. All this big money is getting into politics now. Like George Soros and all these guys, his son, all these big actors and these big donors, they create chaos on purpose for regime change. And that's a coup. That's a coup to me. That's a coup. Now, as voters, we have to be a lot more diligent. We have to be a lot smarter. We have to be a lot a lot more inquisitive of what we see and what we hear, because a lot of what we see and what we hear is AI generated. AI generated. We can't believe what we hear and see anymore at its face. You have to go the extra step to prove that whatever you see or hear is not AI generated. So we get into all the crime statistics, and of course, crime went down and all that after um, President Biden was installed. All three major U.S. stock indices set new records. S&P 500 climbed 57.8%. After-tax corporate profits continue to set records. This is all due. This was all residue from the Trump administration. So we gonna skip down to um, crude oil, natural gas, plant liquids, biofuels, solar and wind, all set domestic production records in Biden's last year in office. So here's what we got. We got 16 we got 16 million jobs created. Most of that is due to the people who got fired because they didn't want to take the shot. You know what I mean, right? They didn't want to take that vaccine shot, and so they lost their job. Or businesses closed down. They didn't, they didn't have any choice but to lose their job if the business cut shut down, and things like that. So unemployment rate 4%, right? It was down during the Biden administration. I think that was a bleed over from the Trump economy, poverty, labor force participation, all that a bleed over. So you got to understand that apprehensions of those trying to cross the southern border illegally were up 107% higher in Biden's last year compared with the year before he took office. So you got apprehensions. That means that you got people who are still bold enough to cross the border or try to cross the border. But if you have people like right now that don't care to cross the border, because if you do, there's retribution, there's consequences behind those actions. The U.S. trade deficits in goods and services went up by nearly 40%. And this gets into the U.S. trade deficit in goods and services went up by nearly 40% under the Biden administration. You know why? Because the Biden administration didn't have enough balls to impose tariffs on countries who are imposing tariffs on us, or are behaving in a way that is detrimental to our American first policies. Home prices rose 37%. The ownership rate fluctuated slightly. Number of people receiving federal food assistance increased only slightly, right? The median household income, when factoring in inflation, went up by $2,100, $2,150 to be exact. The official poverty rate declined, but the alternative supplemental measure increased after pandemic stimulus payments ended. So you could read this for yourself. I could like disappear myself from the screen so you can kind of read it for yourself. But um, they got this guy trotting out. They got President Biden trotting out like he created 16 million jobs out of thin air. Nah, those were return customers for the people who lost their jobs during the early part of the pandemic. I am gonna spend these last few minutes um, convincing my audience that President Joseph Abenel, whatever his middle name is, it sounds kind of sketchy to me, but during the 4 years of President Biden's presidency or tenure, He was installed. He got 81 million votes to Trump's 74 million votes in the 2020 election. Fulton County, Georgia already admitted that there were 315,000 unsigned ballots that were wrapped into counting towards President Biden in Fulton County, Georgia, that contributed to his victory and his uh, election bid over Trump in 2020. Um, when President Biden gets into office, he immediately starts the chaos. Chaos being he was unfit mentally and physically to serve as president. He was unable to do the job. His daily schedule that's open source to Americans across the country can see that his calendar barely had any activity on it. In August 2021, the Afghan withdrawal debacle that killed 13 U.S. troops and hundreds of Afghan personnel who helped us out during our 20 years of war in the Middle East and that region, including Iraq. They were sitting on the wings of the airplane thinking that it was some type of cartoonish thing. But when the plane took off, and I'm not going to show the video here, but when the plane took off, bodies started to fall to the ground. Okay. Then in September 2021, Biden had the balls to say that all government workers and nearly 80% of the private sector workforce is going to be forced to take the shot. And I wasn't going for that shit. You gonna tell me what I'm gonna do? And I'm not in the military anymore? Come on, man. I mean, I'm still subject to the UCMJ. I'm not stupid. But, I mean, like, my decisions on what I do with my body, my choice has nothing to do with readiness. I'm not a part of readiness anymore. Unless, they send me some draft papers and stuff and I accept them and I got to get ready. But I've been retired for 6 years. I'm still subject to the UCMJ, just like Mark Kelly. I'll do a separate video on him as well. But Joe Biden was installed. He had mental acuity problems before he got elected. He doesn't look like the same Joe Biden from 10 years ago. So think what you want about that. the Afghanistan withdrawal debacle, forcing the COVID 19 shot on people when they didn't want it, forced them to lose their jobs. Yeah, I said it. YouTube, cut me off, whatever. I'll go to Rumble or some other daggone social media platform. Then you got inflation that shot up to 9%, the worst in 40 years. I mean, inflation has been worse than that throughout American history, but within the last 40 years, it shot up to 9%, right? Put the price of everything out of the hands of Main Street Americans. Americans like me, right? Americans like you. Put it out of their hands. Put the American dream out of touch with normal Americans. Then he President Biden flooded our country with 15 plus million illegal aliens. It's probably more like 25 million. It's probably more than that. And what people don't get about illegal immigration is that when there's more competition for housing, when there's more competition for a private school, when there's more competition for anything, and there's um, lack of supply of those things, then the prices go up. Prices go up. You want to know why eggs cost more? You want to know why groceries cost more? Because there's more people buying them because there was 25 plus million illegal aliens that flooded our country that's demanding these things. And so the prices are going to go up because there's less supply because of more demand. And if you can't produce the supply fast enough, you have to raise prices on the supply that you got on the books to make up for what you can't produce volume wise in your supply chain. It's as simple as that. The price of everything went up because of illegal aliens. Because there's more people to feed. There's more beef to cut. There's more chickens to chop. And if you getting the same amount of chickens, but more people demanding them, guess what? Them chickens gonna cost more. Then he's gonna spend time in front of the nation and say that Trump and people who supported Trump are a threat to democracy. A threat to democracy. I'm telling you, man, you can't make this shit up. A threat to democracy. Us Trump supporters. Um, and then the auto pen thing. Like, nobody's talking about all this stuff. Like, what are we doing? 95% of the things, the documents that affected American people were signed by auto pen. And then his mental health acuity, right? He took naps during the day. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm a big nap guy, but if you're the president of the United States, you gotta be there. You gotta be you gotta show up. And I don't think that President Biden is showing up in the same way that President Trump right now is showing up, or as President Trump showed up during his first term. And then you have your mental status. They calling you weekend at Bernie's, bro. There's crack at the White House. There's the 51 intelligence agents that said that the Hunter laptop was Russia disinformation, lying about that, weaponizing the daggone DOJ against President Trump with the 34 felony counts, 91 indictments. Sometimes I get those numbers mixed around, but Fannie Willis and Letitia James and Al Bragg. Not, President Trump got his house raided. President Trump got his house raided. How else do you see this, man? My computer skipped a little bit, and President Biden in my lifetime is the worst president I've ever experienced. President Biden had a basically a man that took growth hormones and developed titties, dancing topless on the White House lawn during the Easter celebration or whatever celebration they were doing. Okay? Um, President Biden's interaction with the public was interrupted by an unknown suspect in a bunny rabbit suit. If you don't believe me, go to X, research it, you'll find it. He had cocaine in the White House under his charge. Are you kidding me, man? Are you kidding me? There's more immoral, atrocious, and then on top of that, President Biden is caught on television saying, if you don't fire this investigator in Ukraine or wherever Hunter Biden was, if you don't put the kibosh on the U.S.'s investigation, or I think it was a Ukrainian investigation, something like that, that was going on, and Biden was like, "Hey, if you want this $1 billion, stop the investigation of Hunter Biden and his immoral activity out there, allegedly." allegedly. Um, and then you have the pardoning of, excuse me, you have the pardoning of all these individuals at the last minute. At the last minute, right before Trump was inaugurated, like 30 minutes prior. Come on, man. What are we doing? Like, how are we talking about Biden Harris over Trump JD Vance or Trump Pence? How are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Is because you guys are a bunch of punk ass bitches, and I'm doing this for free, so I'm raw, right? And you know, I'm not rich, but I'm doing all right. I don't think that I need money to persuade me to, and people may be like, okay, well, it just depends on how many commas are in what they offering you. And but even still, I could point to different areas and times in the past where one comma meant a lot to me. And one comma does mean a lot to me now, but when we talk about two commas and three commas and stuff like that, it's like, you know, if somebody approaches me and offers me an amount of money for anything that I'm doing that is going to be destructive or whatever the case may be, my tendency is going to be, nah, I'm good, right? Now, I mean, if it's for a cause that I believe in, at least 85%, yeah, I'll help out. But I mean, you can get rid of some of the commas unless they're really serious about paying me. But I mean, I've been in that position before. I've been in positions where I know that I was getting set up. Like, you know, hey, just go in that room and whatever, and you see a whole bunch of stuff laying around, and you know, I'm not that dude, man. First of all, I'm not that dude that would take something from somebody, and I'm not that dude that you would want to mm, run a test on like that, testing me to see if I'm gonna take something. I don't like that either. I don't like that either. Um, but I'm rambling on. Joe Biden is the worst president that I know in my lifetime who's still living. He created hell for the American worker and the oil industry. He created hell for people who dissented towards his policies while he was in office. And he was installed, in my opinion, just like they tried to install Kamala Harris while we weren't going for it. And we don't want Kamala Harris. Fuck Kamala Harris. Because She's not qualified to do anything. She can't even speak. She just can't. But hey, thanks for joining me, and I'll catch you in the next one. All right. Hey, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.